at the real losses.
Meeting of the town of Plympton is now open. Welcome to Plympton's special town meeting. Chief Moderator John Trina, 62 Crescent Street. At this point, I would ask everybody to rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. You should have received a copy of the special town meeting warrant upon signing in. If you didn't, it's always have extra copies. Please ensure that you all signed in. I'm assuming everybody in the room has signed in. Tonight's meeting is being taped or broadcast by Comcast Cable Television. You were checked in by fellows for the meeting, Tricia Dedeman and Jean Reynolds. Present tonight, we have up front from the Board of Selectmen, Chairman Matt Russo, Colleen Thompson, and John Henry, as well as Town Clerk in the far corner, Tara Morrison. In the front row, we also have members of the Finance Committee, Marilyn Brown, Lisa Hart, and Susan Oscar. Some of our town boards and offices also have representatives here this evening, including the school committee. Since you will be hearing from some of them this evening before we finish, I will ask them to introduce themselves as they rise to address the warrant article. Several of our officials are not residents of the town, and as such need your permission to address the assembly. I would entertain a motion that we allow the following folks to participate tonight when and if appropriate. Town Coordinator Dale Blue, Town Accountant Barbara Gomez, Superintendent Silver Lake Regional School District John Tuffy, and Principal Janet Peter Benito. Could I have a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I make a motion that the following officials, or the officials you just mentioned, who are not residents of Plympton, be allowed to speak when and where appropriate.
Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Are there any other people in the audience who are not registered voters who are not sitting against the further one? Procedural rules that I will be following as moderator. Only after being recognized by the moderator may a member address the meeting. After making a motion, an article sponsor will be allowed up to 3 minutes for a presentation. Speakers do not need to use the full allotted time. Speakers from the floor will be allowed up to 2 minutes on the first round of discussion and up to 2 minutes more on the second round. A speaker from the floor who wishes to address the meeting for a second time on an article must wait until persons who have not yet spoken have had their turn. Should you tire the debate as we go along, you may offer the motion, I move the question. You cannot offer this if you have already spoken. In other words, you have to say it without any other discussion. It requires a second. It requires a 2/3 vote, and at that point, all discussion ends and we vote on the motion. Reconsideration. Since we're only doing one article, I will not entertain reconsideration tonight. If a vote declared by the moderator is immediately questioned by 7 or more voters, I will verify it by polling the voters. In addition to the above laws of the Commonwealth and the town bylaws, the reference book town meeting time sets out for our guidance. A few simple rules. Please stand when speaking, state your name and your street address. We have Andrew Adams, a Boy Scout, who will walk around with a mic so that you are able to talk into it. I'd appreciate if you would use that as cable. It will not pick you up unless you're speaking into the mic. we have a number of shut-ins in town who enjoy the ability to see and hear the town meeting replay. Please direct all comments to the moderator. Please turn off all cell phones. If proposing any substantial amendment, it must be in writing. Finally, as I've said in the past, we're all friends and neighbors before this meeting. After this meeting, we will still be neighbors. Hopefully, with civility and respect for all speakers, we'll be friends. Article 1. To see if the town will vote to approve the revised and increased Silver Lake District operating budget for the fiscal year 2014-2015, including applying $619,000 from the district's excess and deficiency budget to pay for long-term security, building grounds, and equipment capital needs, with no change in the town's assessment or take any other action thereto. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Moderator,
Mrs. Springer.
Maureen Springer from Granville Lake Way. I move to accept the motion as read.
Do I have a second?
Oh, I'm sorry. I move to accept the motion as read. Thank you.
Do I have a second? Second. Mrs. Springer, would you like to?
Yes. Excuse my back. Hello, I'm Maureen Springer from Granville Baker Way. Thank you for joining us on this cold Friday night in February. I'm speaking to you tonight as a parent, a taxpayer, a dedicated member of our town, and an elected school committee member of Silver Lake. The article we are voting on tonight will not raise our taxes. We will not take money from any other town department. The money for the Silver Lake Capital Plan will come directly and exclusively from the settlement of a 10-year lawsuit with the town of Pembroke. In 2004, when Pembroke split from the Silver Lake schools, there was a dispute that has been in court for over 10 years. During these years, Silver Lake reserved a sum of money in the event that we lost the litigation. That amount over the years has totaled $927,651. However, Silver Lake and Pembroke settled the lawsuit this past July of 2014. This required Pembroke to pay the retirement health care costs that had accumulated over the 10 years, or an additional sum of $917,202. Since March of last year, the Silver Lake School Committee has been working towards a capital plan to address long-standing issues. After meeting with administrators, the Director of Building and Grounds, the Director of Career and Technical Education, the business manager, school principals, and other parties, a plan was created, debated, changed, and finally approved by the school committee in November of 2014. Silver Lake has delayed repairs and maintenance to our buildings, grounds, and infrastructure. Many of these necessary items were often included in yearly budgets, but then were removed prior to town meetings due to the financial state of the towns and the local economy. Ignoring, avoiding, or delaying this plan will not make it go away. We will then pay dearly for the future costs through taxpayer assessments. Upon approval of the capital plan tonight, the remaining balance of the reserved funds, over $1 million, will be returned to the towns. For Plympton, that is approximately $110,000. As with all Silver Lake budgets, 2 of our towns must approve the expenditure. Kingston has approved this plan by not holding a town meeting to question it. Halifax has not approved the plan. Plympton is 11% of the Silver Lake budget. We are always the last town to have a say in the way the Silver Lake budget is voted. We may be the smallest town in the region, but I believe that we have a strong voice, and I urge you to take a stand in support of this capital plan. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Henry.
John Henry, 225 Main Street. I'm going to start out, I think all of my fellow select people are going to want to speak.
John, I don't think it's on.
Hello?
There you go.
John. The other 2 are going to speak, and I'm going to leave to them. They're going to express the board's extreme disappointment in the process that was followed by Silver Lake School Committee. I'm sure the FinCom will talk to some extent about the process. Basically, it stunk and we were blindsided. One thing I do want to talk about, I'm going to leave that to them, I want to talk about the fact that the meeting on January 8th, where this spending was passed, was a gross violation of the open meeting law. And I personally have filed a complaint with Silver Lake, and I'm sure after the time period runs out, I will file it with the Attorney General. I'm pretty sure and comfortable in the fact that it was a violation. What I do want to talk about, a little bit about numbers. The first thing that I want to mention is I guess I better have it right up here. I think Silver Lake is actually 13%. I'm not. Plympton is actually 13% of Silver Lake. Because,
It's 11.9.
well, I've got a formula. Once we did that adjustment last year for 100,000, I think we are 13%. It's not no big deal, but I handed out an estimated budget. We've thought all along 2016 was going to be a tough year. I don't think we thought it was going to be this tough. Does everybody have it? Are there any left up there?
Anybody else want to?
Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Let's just give her a minute here to hand them out.
Anybody else?
Okay, I will start. I'm looking at the first page, starts out estimated revenue. We right now, Barbara has calculated, we think we're going to have $290,000 less revenue.
John, why don't you use this mic? It's not, this is not.
Better? There we go. Oh, say can. We think we're going to have almost $300,000 less revenue this year. Most of it comes from, there was $235,000 made up of budgets that weren't spent last year, the big item being sped. And so a bunch got turned back, and so we had extra revenue. New growth is way down from over 100,000 last year to 32,000 this year. So, and this also assumes, as it says there, that state aid remains the same. Indications that I've seen is I think Chapter 70 will remain, with the exception of there may be some issues with busing. So this number won't get smaller, it could get bigger. Our share of the Silver Lake requested increase, $105,000. Dennett requested increase, $257,000. Don't hold that against them. The majority, $172,000, is sped, that is back, and we know it bounces all over the place. A lot of towns now have sped stabilization accounts to try and deal with these fluctuations. Also at Dennett, between the pay raises for the teachers, the principal, et cetera, I think there's about $25,000 contractual costs. And what this list is before we even get down to the day-to-day budgets of everybody else, buying paper clips and paper and stuff like that. I'm just looking at the fixed costs, the things that we can't do anything about. Here in the town hall, we've got contracted pay raises. We settled the union contract with the police. They got a 2% pay raise. Police chief, fire chief, town coordinator, they all have contracts. And then the last, estimated increase in insurance and pension, it's more apt to be double this if the pension costs go up as much as they did last year. Oh, my time is up. Okay.
I want to give everybody a chance, and
you'd be able to speak again, John, but I don't want to have
Okay.
go on and on. So we're going to open it up to discussion from the floor. Yes, sir.
I don't think I'm gonna need that.
Please bear with us, because it does
Okay.
not come on the table.
Thank you, sir. George Colby, 380 Main Street. I have one question. If we vote no, does this money come back into Plympton's general coffers?
It should.
The answer is yes.
Excuse me.
Maureen?
According to the
Maureen.
laws that stand, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
According to the way the law stands now, the Department of Revenue requires that any funds over the E&D account, which is very confusing for those of us that don't deal with it, go back to the towns by reducing the assessments that we would pay that we all would be paying for Silver Lake. It doesn't go into the general fund. There has been some talk through the selectmen and different finance committees that we may look at it to see if we can get an exception to that. This is a very unique situation. I don't believe that the state has had a regional school district break up, then go into a lawsuit, and then have money going back and forth. So they're sticking with what they have on the books now, and we're hoping to work with them on that.
As a point of clarification?
Yes, sir.
As a point of clarification,
I stand corrected with my assumption that this will go back in the general coffers. But at any rate, this money would be a reduction of what we would have to pay next year because we've already got this much towards Silver Lake for next year, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Other discussion? Susan,
Have to stand.
please.
I'm going to stand over here. Tara, my apologies. Susan Ossoff, I'm on 37 Upland Road, and I'm the chairman of the Finance Committee. I'd just like to read a statement that has been approved by the Finance Committee. A couple of things I'd like to clarify before I address this article. First, the Finance Committee supports schools strongly. 3 of the 4 members are former school committee members. I served for 13 years on the Plympton School Committee. I was on the Union 31 Committee that worked with Silver Lake for probably 11 years, and including being the chair, and I chaired the Plympton School Building Committee. We support schools. Second, the town has supported its schools. If you look at the Dennett School and the Silver Lake Middle and High Schools and compare them to the Plympton Town Hall, the police station, and the fire station, you would see that we support schools. If you also look at the quality of the education that's provided by these schools, it's very high. The town supports its children in its schools. To get to the issues, last year the Finance Committees asked the Silver Lake Regional School Committee for a capital plan. I'm referring to, when I say Finance Committees, it's the Halifax, Plympton, and Kingston School Finance Committees, and we have been working very closely together. We also asked for spending projections, and we got neither. What's being presented here is not a capital plan. It's spending money that's available without having to get the support of the towns. What are the other needs? When are they going to be addressed? We all need to do capital planning. Plympton has a capital improvement planning committee, which is currently the finance committee. We try to do capital planning 5 years in advance. What is Silver Lake going to need to do next year? A plan is necessary and needs to be presented to the public. We're not trying to bait that the needs identified by the school committee on their list are real. What we ask is that a full and open discussion about them happen and that they be brought to the voters of the towns just as every other department has to. The one item on the list that we believe is totally inappropriate is funding OPEB, which is a liability to fund employment benefits for people that after they leave employment. It's a serious issue for almost every city and town government. Plympton's current liability is more than $3 million. And not 1 cent has been appropriated to fund it. OPEB is not a capital need, and there's no reason it should be included on this list and be part of a budget modification in the middle of the year. These are not emergency needs. The process should not be one that presents us in a budget vacuum. Early budget projections, and I stress they're early, because the governor's budget isn't even out yet, show us having less revenue available than last year, as John addressed. And And we do fund a capital fund that happens automatically. If that holds true, it could mean level funding at best for budgets. For Silver Lake, which is now presenting a budget with more than a 5% increase, it would be devastating, possibly requiring reductions in staff. Voters should view this spending in light of the entire budget, not in the vacuum created by Silver Lake taking this vote mid-year and forcing a special town meeting where only one article is being discussed. There is an entire budget picture that needs to be considered. We believe that how money that was appropriated by the voters of the 3 towns is spent is a decision that lies in the hands of the voters of the 3 towns now that the legal case has been settled. We have been funding benefits that Pembroke should have been funding, and now that the case is settled, the money should be returned so the voters can decide how it is spent. We believe in process. No department should be allowed to spend more than $500,000 without the voters having a say, following a full discussion of the issues and in the context of the entire budget picture. That's missing here. The Finance Committee has recommended that you vote no to this article, and a no vote is not a vote that says we won't fund any of these needs. It is a vote to allow everyone to make that decision in the context of the entire budget picture as it should be. These are not emergency needs and should not be funded from excess and deficiency mid-year. Silver Lake should have engaged in discussion with the towns and should have recognized the burden they created on the towns by voting to amend their budget mid-year. This is a precedent that the Finance Committee does not believe should be supported. The Finance Committee believes every department should seek town meeting approval for all expenditures in the context of the entire budget picture, except in an emergency situation. These are not emergency needs. Vote no, bring this vote to the special town meeting that's held every year at the annual town meeting, when you will have a complete picture of the budget needs of all of the departments. And all of us, the voters, can then make reasoned and intelligent decisions about which of these needs are priorities in the context of knowing the needs of all departments in our town. We need to work together in cooperation and in recognition of process and in support of all the members of our communities.
No hands? No discussion?
Mr. Moderator, I'm Mark Russo, 140 Palmer Road.
Better use that. Thank you, Andrew.
I think Susan said it beautifully, and she must have grabbed my notes because I would pretty much say the exact same thing. I am going to vote no on this. I don't come to this decision at all easily. I believe excellent education is one of the best investments we can make in our town, in the state, and in the country. I also believe it's really short-sighted to delay maintenance, as some of these projects would take care of that. At the same time, though, we have to be very careful about process. And the process here in making this, in the school committee administration making the decision to amend the budget in the middle of the year didn't go very well. The January 8th school committee meeting really showed that Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee members from all 3 towns were invited. That was the evening that the school committee voted to amend the budget in the middle of the year. Not me, because I'm not that savvy, but there were a lot of savvy people in that room from all 3 towns that did not understand that the budget was being amended in that year. In fact, I sat through that whole meeting and was in favor of many of the projects, but spent most of the meeting wondering, well, how are we going to get this through town meeting, with no idea that this was an amended budget for this year. So many of the projects that are on this list are things that are going to need to be done, but I think as Susan so eloquently said, this needs to be looked at in the terms of a big plan, thoughtfully, fully explained, fully debated. A no vote tonight doesn't exclude any of these projects from happening, but just happening a little later on with the vote at special town meeting coming up in May or some future town meeting.
Other discussion? Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Hi there, Gail Knight, Winnetoxet Road. Gail Knight, Winnetoxet Road. I had a question, and that's really probably toward Mrs. Springer, and that would just be on the other side of this. Is there a reason for the timing? that's it? Is there a reason that the vote was held in January and not
Laurie?
waited until May?
Thank you. The reason that we voted this at that time of year was because many of the projects that have to be done must be done while the children are not in the building. A lot of this has to do with outside fields, the parking lots, different safety issues that we have, fixing the metal fab floor. None of these things can be done. We cannot have different subcontractors in there without quarry checks and all these things. So these kind of things need to be scheduled prior to the summer, so once school starts, the next few days they start coming in. The CTE projects, which is the carpentry projects, which are on the list, will be done by the carpentry students at Silver Lake. Those projects are usually planned a year ahead of time. We have to have everything in place, so when that class starts in September, they're not just looking around as to what to do. Foundations need to be put in, different things like that. We understand that the process, we apologized about the process. None of us felt that we were doing anything that was incorrect. However, in my opinion, to hold this up at this point because people are not happy with the process is going to set us back. Again, these things aren't going to go away. I'm curious to say, if we were to come to town meeting and say we need $600,000 at the May town meeting, what are the chances of that getting passed? We were denied $10,000 last year for a new math teacher at the middle school. You know, we're just putting our cards on the table and we hope that you'll support us.
Other discussion? Go ahead.
Hi, Colleen Thompson, 192 Main Street. I just wanted to reiterate that it's not that we're against education or the spending that the school needs. We want to take care of our buildings, we want to take care of our children. But this paper that I think Silver Lake handed out says very clearly that what we want is a conversation, excuse me, I have to put my glasses on, with a democratic vote to decide the path we take forward together. And I think that Silver Lake Committee voting on this in January sort of took our presence out of this debate. And that's what we're here to decide now.
Other discussion? Yes, sir.
Jason Frazier, 66 Maple Street. I was not part of the vote at the Silver Lake Regional School Committee that approved this capital plan. But now,
You are on the regional school committee for Plympton.
I was going to address that, sir. Yes, Mr. Moderator. Subsequent to the vote, I was appointed to the Silver Lake Regional School Committee by the Selectman and Mrs. Springer. I'd just like you to consider the implications that our schools are very much like other communities' beaches. We put a lot of money into this jewel of our town, of the Tri-Town community. And over time, the beauty of those schools have started to erode. There's aging processing going on. What we're looking to do is just restore what our community really looks to as its gem. We're talking about revenue here. Just think about the implications if our schools fell in status, fell in their ability to educate our children, what it would do to property values and subsequently what it would do to the taxes that could be pulled in from those property values. Just something to think of. Thank you.
Move the question.
Let me see first if there's any other. I don't believe we've, I'm taking a moderator's prerogative to just hold off on that until we've had a chance for everybody to speak once.
Lisa Hot, 7 Marine Lane Drive. This is such a hard thing because, first so you know, I've been on the school committee, I support the schools, sometimes people think too much, My daughter will be going to middle school next year. I support most of these projects. I mean, my boys were in the high school and didn't have lockers. It's not that we don't support the schools and support a lot of these projects. It's that what happens when the next budget comes if we have to level fund Silver Lake? What's more important at that point? Fixing the parking lots and the tennis courts, or keeping our teachers on staff? That money can be used to help with the budget at that point. I think that's the problem with looking at this all by itself right now, is that you're not seeing the whole picture of the schools. I mean, I'm concerned about the schools, I'm concerned about what's going to happen. I've seen these revenue numbers, and it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be pretty for anything. We need to be able to look at these projects at the same time that we're looking at the rest of the budget. And if we last year said that we couldn't fund a middle school teacher, well, last year I know Plympton took a stance of no new personnel through the whole town, and that's why we wouldn't support that. We need to be able to look at everything together.
Other discussion? Anybody who hasn't spoken that would like to speak? Okay. Seeing no hands, I assume we're ready to vote. A yes vote will allow the Regional High School Committee to spend the $609,019 as addressed in the motion. A no vote will force this to go back to the Silver Lake Committee for their look again at what the next item would be. So if we vote no, that would mean that Plympton and Halifax have voted no, and the motion does not pass, and the $619,000 would not be spent without the Silver Lake Regional High School Committee readdressing it, and then they have the option to pass it again if they wanted to bring it to town meeting. So, all those in favor, yes, please raise your right hand. All those opposed? The motion fails. That's the only motion on the article. I would entertain a motion that the special town meeting now be dissolved. Second. Thank you for coming. Appreciate the turnout.
Break it down. No, that's okay.